Please. Help me. Her voice suddenly came from the back door of the house. As I was processing this, she appeared with a pale face, swaying slightly. Why? You were just... Yes, the mother-in-law had passed away and had been cremated the day before. What on earth is happening? She slowly beckoned me, and my back was drenched in cold sweat, my mouth dry with fear. Is this a dream? Terrified, I squeezed my eyes shut. My name is Eleanor. Until I met my husband Paul, who is 3 years older, I had no luck in love and led a lonely, work-centered life. When I fell ill and went to the hospital, the doctor who attended to me was Paul. After that, we kept bumping into each other in town and at the supermarket, and we naturally started talking. With his approach, our relationship progressed quickly to marriage. However, living with his parents was unexpected. His father Dean was the director of the hospital where Paul worked, and a strict man devoted to his job. On the other hand, his mother Arya was gentle and kind, welcoming me warmly. If Arya is here, maybe I can manage too. Becoming a housewife at my husband's request, I decided to try my best with Arya's guidance.
I want to have children as soon as possible.
Ever since we got married, Paul had been saying this almost as a mantra. Thinking he would make a doting father, I also made efforts to prepare my body for pregnancy. 2 years later, we had a long-awaited baby boy, whom we named Logan.
Eleanor, thank you. Thank you so much.
In the postpartum hospital room, my husband cried with joy. However, once we were home, he admired Logan from a distance and did not participate in childcare. Today is your day off, isn't it? Could you feed Logan while I hang the laundry?
That's your job, isn't it? If I do the childcare too, what's the point of you being here?
Laughing, Paul returned his gaze to the TV. At first, I thought he was joking, but it turned out he wasn't. It started when Logan began crying at night.
I can't sleep because of the noise. Make him stop crying quickly.
He yelled at me while snapping at the crying Logan. Startled by his voice, Logan cried even more intensely, so I took him to the living room to soothe him. But he wouldn't stop crying, and as I was at a loss, Paul drove us to the entrance.
Don't come back until he quiets down. If I become sleep-deprived, many patients will be inconvenienced. You're his mother, so get a grip.
Feeling like he was talking about someone else, I could only sigh. This is too much. While soothing Logan, I rubbed my sleepy eyes at the nearby park, and Arya came to check on us in her nightgown. Are you okay? I'll take over, so take a little rest. I'm sorry. Thank you. For me, who was rebuffed by Paul, Arya was the only one who understood. Thanks to her help during the tough nights, I managed to get through it. But the difficulties continued. When Logan started eating solid food, Dean began to strictly manage our household finances.
You've been spending too much lately. Aren't you living too freely on someone else's money?
Indeed, expenses had increased for Logan's clothes, diapers, and food. Plus, since Dean and Paul disliked frugal meals, I had to prepare a variety of dishes, which cost money. But we weren't living extravagantly. Rather, the household was strained by Dean and Paul often drinking out late, claiming it was for work. Still, They refused to change their behavior and started cutting back on the money they gave us.
Since you're only doing housework, we don't need to give you extra money. Exactly. Even if your clothes are worn out, you can still wear them. You don't deserve any luxuries like we do.
Paul laughed and agreed with his father's harsh words. For them, drinking out was more important than supporting the family. But we're already making do with very little money. If you cut it any more, I'll have to reduce Logan's meals.
Then stop eating yourself. Are you prioritizing your own appetite over your child's?
I had no words for Dean's cold response. As I was speechless, Arya gently placed her hand on my shoulder and stepped forward. That's too harsh. Eleanor is always working hard for the family.
That's natural since she stays at home. Isn't it presumptuous to think she can be equal to us without earning?
Dean's words were accompanied by Paul's nod and smirk. The kind, gentle face Paul once had was gone. Proud of being doctors, they looked down on housewives like me. Then I'll work. Eleanor is still busy with childcare, but I can work. Dean looked startled by Arya's sudden declaration. Times have changed. It's time to stop thinking of women as servants. We have value too.
You're quite bold. If you're so determined, I'll find you a good job.
Dean exchanged a smile with Paul and left the room. After they left, I immediately ran to Arya. I'm sorry. I was too cowardly. It's fine. I've reached my limit too. I don't want to see you and Logan suffer anymore. Arya was truly impressive, and I swore to myself to become as strong as she was. Early the next morning, Paul woke me up and took me to Arya's room. What happened?
Something happened to Mom.
Arya.
Arya won't wake up.
Trying to understand the situation, I went to her side, but Paul stopped me forcefully.
Dad and I will try to revive her, so don't get in the way. Go take care of Logan.
Though his words were harsh, it was best to leave it to the doctors. Worried, I waited outside the room with Logan. After a while, Dean came out and said, we couldn't save her. Arya had passed away. Why did this happen so suddenly?
There was a bag of medicine by her bedside that she doesn't usually take. It doesn't mix well with her usual medication. I always told her to be careful.
Dean's words left me speechless. From then on, everything happened in a blur. Dean arranged the cremation without a funeral. Even when I protested, Paul intervened to stop me.
Stop being selfish. Mom was old. Accidents like this aren't rare.
Even so, not properly sending off your own mother. Is that really okay with you?
You misunderstand. You're also responsible for what happened to Mom.
Shocked by his harsh words, I couldn't believe my ears. Why would you say that?
You pushed housework and childcare onto her. That must have added to her stress.
I was so shocked by Paul's words that I couldn't do anything. Seeing this, Paul, unusually, took out the trash. While I was in shock, Dean efficiently handled the procedures, and I couldn't properly say goodbye to Arya. I wasn't even allowed to attend the cremation. Dean did it alone.
From now on, you'll do all the housework. No more slacking off.
Dean's cold words deeply wounded my still grieving heart. The day after the cremation, I was still feeling down, But Paul and Dean cheerfully talked about going to the insurance company.
Dad took out life insurance on Mom. We're going to talk about it, so make sure to do the housework properly today. Once we know how much the insurance payout is, let's have a lavish meal tonight.
Ignoring their insensitive conversation, I continued with my chores alone. About an hour after they left, I heard a noise from the back door. Please. Help me. Then I heard Aria's voice, even though she was supposed to be dead. Am I hearing things? Thinking that, I went to check and found Aria standing there. What? How? I was so shocked that I couldn't speak. Aria had been cremated the day before. Then, who is this? As I thought about it, chills ran down my spine. Come here. Noticing me, she beckoned me over. My legs trembling, I slowly walked towards her. Aria. When I asked, she confirmed Paul and the others weren't around and nodded firmly. I have to tell you something. Please listen before they notice. The warmth of her hand gripping mine proved she was indeed alive. What she revealed next was an unbelievably horrifying truth. After hearing everything, I felt a deep, unrelenting anger. Don't worry, I'll help too. This is unforgivable. My mother-in-law left to hide again, and as I watched her go, I resolved to take revenge on them. A few days later, the insurance agent was supposed to come to our house, so my father-in-law and husband took the day off to wait at home. As I grew increasingly annoyed by their giddy behavior, my father-in-law approached me.
You're still eating thanks to Aria's insurance money. Shouldn't you be more grateful?
That's wrong. I'm not happy about it at all.
Women who can only rely on others are never grateful for money.
He laughed derisively and plopped down on the sofa. Next to him, Paul smirked. Then the intercom rang.
Oh, they're here.
As they went to the door, they froze when they saw who was standing there. What? Why are you here? My husband, pale and trembling, pointed at the person in shock. It wasn't the insurance agent, but my mother-in-law. I came back because I had unfinished business. Next to her stood a man, standing tall and proper, wearing a suit with a lawyer's badge.
That's impossible. I checked her pulse. It had completely stopped.
He was more flustered than I'd ever seen. No wonder. She had been cremated, and he had even collected her bones. Then my mother-in-law fixed her gaze on Paul and my father-in-law and began to speak quietly. You switched my regular medicine, didn't you? I noticed something was off immediately. She started to recount the true story behind the incident. It was my father-in-law who switched her usual medication with something else before she went to bed. I haven't forgotten how you laughed in my ear as I was suffering, unable to speak.
I don't know anything about that. It's all lies.
As my mother-in-law pressed him, he backed away, overwhelmed by her determination.
I checked to make sure. And we had a cremation ceremony. Why are you here?
Maybe God saved me? That night, her heart had indeed stopped. After my father-in-law's final check, she was taken to the funeral home, where miraculously, she regained consciousness. You must have adjusted the dose so that you could deny it if the police investigated. That's why I barely survived. Just before being cremated, she made noise inside the coffin and was discovered by the funeral home staff. Knowing her family was behind it, she decided to hide temporarily. The funeral director, being an old acquaintance, helped me with the plan. We even staged the ceremony. Thanks to the funeral home's cooperation, they successfully deceived my father-in-law. She then presented some documents to the two of them. While hiding, I did some investigating. A $100,000 life insurance policy was taken out just a few months ago, and I knew nothing about it. It was my father-in-law's policy, with him as the beneficiary. Faced with this evidence, my father-in-law was speechless and clicked his tongue in frustration.
You didn't die as you were supposed to, making me look like a fraud. You've disgraced me.
Instead of expressing remorse, he only blamed her. Unable to bear it, I stepped forward. That's not all. This is a crime. You tried to kill my mother-in-law. I won't forgive you. Then, my husband, who had been trembling, suddenly moved behind me and glared at his father.
I didn't want to do it. But Dad made me. I'm a victim too. What? You were the one who planned the insurance scam.
As my father-in-law advanced on Paul, I retreated to my mother-in-law's side.
If you hadn't wasted money on cabaret girls, we wouldn't be in this mess. You spent all our savings, you idiot. You did the same, ordering expensive drinks and being surrounded by young girls. You enjoyed it too.
It was the most pathetic family quarrel I'd ever seen. As we stood there in disbelief, my father-in-law suddenly smirked as if he had an idea.
Right. Arya said I switched her medication, but there's no proof. The evidence would be long gone by now, so you can't prove it, right? Yeah, I threw the medicine packet out that morning, so it's gone. Dad, you're so smart.
Thinking they had found a way out, they didn't realize I had been waiting for this moment. We signaled the lawyer, who pulled out a plastic bag containing the medicine packet. They recognized it immediately.
How is that here? I threw it out.
Yes, but garbage isn't always collected immediately. Paul, who never did any housework, didn't know that trash collection schedules vary. He had thrown it out with the burnable garbage, but that day was for recyclable trash, so our bag was left behind. After hearing my mother-in-law's story the day after the cremation, I retrieved the packet and handed it to the lawyer. Fingerprints from both of you were found on it. Clear evidence of the switch. Hearing this, my father-in-law collapsed like a puppet with its strings cut. But Paul, eyes full of tears, clung to my feet.
Listen. Dad's target was you, not Mom.
Oh. And?
You're younger and do housework, right? I protected you because of the kids and all.
Maybe he said this hoping for forgiveness. But I confronted him, veins bulging in anger. So you tried to kill your own mother and expect me to be grateful?
I'm your savior.
Instead of replying, I picked up my phone to call the police.
Please, don't. I needed the money because I was tricked by a woman. Dad did it too. We had to do this to protect the family. Understand?
How could I sympathize with someone who tried to kill Arya over something so trivial? I despise you. The police arrived shortly after I called, and the two were taken away. As the tension released, we collapsed, unable to stop the tears. Later, they were found guilty and sentenced to a long stay in prison. Besides the insurance fraud, they had previously falsified medical reports for money. All this to impress cabaret girls. Utterly pathetic. My mother-in-law and I claimed $30,000 each in damages, which they reluctantly paid in full. We used the money to move to a new place and start a new life with our son Logan. We're pouring all our love into raising him to value family over money. How was this story? Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. See you in the next video.